Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's episode of Ask Leah. I hope you are keeping warm and dry on this freezing cold and windy night. It is so windy. Hopefully it doesn't mess with the audio for this video tonight. So I've got a question that came in through the week to answer tonight, but I also wanted to have a chat with you about something that can really have an impact on the way you communicate, and that is to come at communication with an attitude of curiosity. Now, this is a big concept, but I'm going to nut it down to a few key reasons why curiosity is so important tonight. Number one, it helps you to be able to take feedback better. One of the things we tend to do when we receive feedback is immediately get defensive. Okay, we don't even let the person finish what it is they're trying to say, and we are already jumping in with, no, I don't do that, or, oh, that's not the case. And when we do this, it often escalates an argument really quickly, because that defensiveness means we jump in before the other person has had a chance to say what they wanted to say. So we listen to respond rather than to understand. We jump in defensively and say, no, that's not the case. And then the other person gets in a huff because we're not listening. So if you take an attitude of curiosity when someone's speaking, you might not agree with what they're saying. Okay, you might not agree with them at all. However, it's about being curious to, okay, so to help me understand where you're coming from, can you explain? Or, I'm really trying to understand this. Can you give me some more information? Or could you give me some examples? It's a really powerful tool. Now, when you take this mindset of curiosity or this curious approach, it helps you gather information, and it really does help you listen to understand, okay, which is so important for a number of reasons. If you're getting feedback and you don't agree with it and you can feel yourself getting defensive, if you take that curious approach, what it does is it means you're gathering information. Now, you may gather the information and go, oh, geez, they've got a point. When they explain it, when they give you that extra information, you might go, oh, actually, I did probably snap the other day. I shouldn't have done that. And you've got the information. But sometimes, and this has certainly happened to me before, when someone gives you feedback and you really disagree and you say, okay, I'm trying to understand, can you tell me more about that? Or can you please give me an example to highlight what you mean? Quite often, it gives you the information you need to be able to have a better response. So if you really don't agree with them, sometimes getting that information allows you to be able to go, okay, so now that you've explained that, I can explain my point of view. And instead of you just jumping in and cutting them off, you can actually have a much better response. So it's really effective. Hello to everyone who has joined tonight. Now, curiosity in communication isn't just about receiving feedback. It's also a great way to get to the heart of a message and what it's really about. Now, today I spent my day with a local government organisation. I ran 2 facilitated meetings today, so sessions where they had some really complex decisions to make around some big projects. What direction do we want to go? What's our strategy for the future? Things that you can get bogged down in talking for ages. And my job as an external facilitator is to come in to help the conversation, to help draw things out from everyone in the room and to keep things on track and moving along. Now, anytime you work with not just government, but any business or organisation, we tend to have our own jargon and lingo, and we can all be guilty of talking about things in a way that doesn't actually make sense. And so curiosity also works in this instance. And one of my favourite questions to ask is, what does that actually mean? Because, it's easy to throw big words around. Oh, it's about sustainability, or it's about the journey, or it's about X, Y, Z. And when you actually say to people, what does that actually mean? Sometimes they can't actually answer you. But more often than not, they'll go, oh, well, it means this. And quite often I'll follow up again with, and what does that actually mean? What does it look like? Can you give me? And it's through that curiosity to find out more, to understand what they actually mean. That's how you get to the heart of what your message is. And it's so important to do that. Now, this is a little activity you can do if you have a meeting coming up or a really difficult conversation that you're thinking, oh, where do I even start? How do I go about this? A great little activity is to bounce it off someone. Bounce it off someone. Might be a partner, might be a friend, might be a colleague. Say, hey, this is what I'm planning to say, and get them to play devil's advocate. Get them to do something I call question and answer sparring with you, where they say, okay, but what does that actually mean? And what outcome do you want there? And get them to ask questions. Rather than get defensive, let's take an attitude of curiosity. It is a game changer for your communication. I encourage you to try it out this week. Okay, question for tonight comes in from a lovely lady who watches every week, and hello to that person. Now, this person tonight, I'm going to call her Hayley. Hayley asked me a question. She works as a dairy farmer, and she works on a dairy farm where there is another person, another staff member as well. And this other staff member that she works with is actually the boss's son. Okay, so she works there to get a bit of extra cash. The other main worker is the boss's son. Now, the boss's son, he does the job, but he might be a little bit lazy in how he ends the day. You know, rather than make sure everything's finished up, the hoses are all collected, everything's where it's meant to be, things are washed out. There's some of those small jobs that he leaves at the end of the shift. And they might not sound like much, but they add up. If you've got to add it, if you're the next person on and those jobs aren't done, or you've got to do them because they've just taken off, it's those little jobs that add up. And anyone who's ever been in an environment where this happens, where people go, what's the big deal? They're just a couple of jobs, 10 minutes here, 15 minutes there. And the challenge for Hayley is she's got kids. She is there for a shift. It should be done in that amount of time. And she knows that if she does what she's meant to do, then she absolutely can knock it over in that time. The problem is, though, boss's son's leaving parts of his job undone. So Hayley's having to pick up the slack. Now, the challenge for Hayley is, how does she approach this with the boss? Now, she has said something multiple times, and I did speak to Hayley about this today, and I said, was she related in any way? And she's not related to them. However, the boss does value Hayley because it's getting to busy time in that farm, on that farm. And so he doesn't want to lose a good worker in Hayley. However, what's happened in the past is Hayley might crack it and say, come on, it shouldn't be me doing this. The boss maybe says something to his son, things improve for a little bit, but then it slides again. And because it's the boss's son, it really gets let go and not picked up on. So how does she have this conversation in a way that is effective? First off, I'm going to give some advice on how you can have the conversation, but unfortunately, the proviso is you can't make them take action. And unfortunately, this sadly often happens in family businesses where that relationship it is favoured. It shouldn't be. The good farmers, and I know lots of family farmers who they're the hardest workers on the farm, but it doesn't always happen. So how can she have this conversation? My advice to Hayley would be to try approaching it from particularly if it's coming to busy time and they may need to hire some extra staff, would potentially approach it with the manager one-on-one and explain the situation to say, you know what, as you know, I've asked a few times before about the little jobs, making sure that they're done by all of us, me included, because that's the expectation. To help ensure we are all clear on what a shift involves, would it be useful if, I drew up a checklist of all the things that we need to make sure are done at the end of a shift? We could print it out, laminate it, stick it up in the shed to make sure that we tick off all those little jobs that can get missed sometimes. And the benefit of that would be that if we do hire someone else, that it's all really clear what the expectations of everyone is. Now, yes, that involves you doing a little bit of work, but it could be worth it in this case. And you obviously know the situation a lot better than I do and whether they'll respond to this. But it might be that, I've worked in volunteer organisations before where we've done this. I worked, I was the president up at the playgroup in Willow Grove for years. And this was an issue we had, and obviously not paid, but it was an issue that we had because at the end of a playgroup session, if the president wasn't there, things wouldn't get done. Now, it's really easy to say they should know what to do, and in this case, this guy should know what to do. But having the checklist there meant there was really no excuse, okay? There was really no excuse. So it might be that you have that for shared expectations. In this case, though, it does sound like the dad, the boss, is lax on it because it is his son. So, Hayley, the question you need to ask yourself is, what are you prepared to do? What happens if there's no change? If this is having an impact on you in terms of being able to get home to look after your kids, if it really is a big issue for you, I would have that conversation with your boss where you sit down. I wouldn't wait for it to happen. I would just sit down with him and say, I'm happy to create a checklist if we need. However, this making sure that we all tick off these jobs, it is really important. You would expect it of me. So I'm not expecting anything more of him than you would expect of me. But the reason it's really important is because it actually does impact things for me. And you're not going with the personal angle because you know that they don't give a hoot about your personal, and we spoke about that. You do know that. But it might be, what does he care about? He cares about you being there and you being the staff member. So it's not about threatening. We are not going down an emotional manipulation or threatening. But if it genuinely is, if it's, we are coming up to the busy time, I want to be the good staff member who's here for you because that's my job and I will always go over and above. However, for me to be able to put in my best and do what I need to do, I need for those jobs, those basic jobs that are standard and part of our shift, to be done by him as well as me so that there's shared expectations. I would have that conversation. I would say, again, it's not threatening, but if you are genuinely, what's not fair, and I do see a lot, is people get to breaking point in this situation and they just quit. And they say, well, this has been going on for ages and you should have done something about it, and I'm out the door, and they quit. And then the other person isn't able to have an opportunity to rectify it. So I'd lay the cards on the table. I'd do it really calmly. I'd explain the why. I'd offer a solution in terms of if a checklist would help, but you've got to put it out there, remembering that you can't control them, okay? You can't control what they do. The dad might just think, bad luck, he's my son, I'll let him get away with it, in which case you then have a choice. You are a very skilled person in the dairy industry. You will walk into another job like that with people who absolutely value your hard work. I'm not saying to go out there and quit, but I am saying if this is the sort of workplace and it's not being addressed, your choice then is, do you stay or do you go? I hope that has been helpful. Hello to everyone else who has joined. To finish up tonight, I want to remind you that I do have a workshop coming up. It's my only public workshop planned for the near future, and it is Effective Communication, Developing Assertiveness for Personal and Career Success. It is in Warragul on Wednesday, the 26th of June. There are only a handful of tickets left. It's going to be a great session. It's actually, I've got to say, I'm really looking forward to this session because it is a very equal mix of male and female. I actually think there might even be a few more males in this one than females. So really good mix of people. You can get tickets through the Facebook page. The book is in audiobook now as well as paperback copy. I've got to share a win with you all. I got this email yesterday from a guy who runs the London Leaders podcast. And he is the founder of a charity in the UK called Wellwater. And he sent me an email out of the blue saying that he read the book and that it had transformed his leadership, and they're after me to come on the podcast. So I'm really looking forward to that. I recorded a podcast about a month ago for Bean Ninjas. That one's coming up. I'm recording another one in a week or so for a local Gippsland podcast, and I'm really looking forward to being on the London Leaders podcast as well. For anyone who has read the book, I'd love to hear your feedback. I'd love it even more if you left a review on Amazon or Booktopia or any of those sites for me. That would be ace. Have a great week. Remember, get your questions to me. I am so happy to try to help and offer advice on anything communication or soft skill. The people bit is the hardest part, folks, and my job is to help you make it easier. So have a great night, look after yourselves, and stay warm. Cheers.